thank you so much for joining me, everyone, on this special episode of the PKF Podcast in acknowledgement of Disability Pride Month. I am joined by the lovely Lana Weldon, our COO at PKF Australia, and Elri van Jaarsveld. In this episode of the PKF Podcast, we're going to be talking about what it's like living with a disability, as these two lovely ladies take me through their own lived experiences, as we talk about what it's like to live with a disability and work here at PKF. So thank you, ladies, for joining me. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Em. Great to be here.
Thank you, Emma.
So to start with, ladies, Lana, we'll start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, in case anyone doesn't know, and also what disability you're living with currently in acknowledgement of this month?
Excellent. Sure, Em. I think pretty much everybody's heard me. Funny that you've got two South African accents on this show again. I'm starting to think it's a PKF thing. But I've lived in Australia for 5 years now. Been with PKF for just over 6 months and absolutely loving it. So I am considered, by South African terms, they called it legally hearing impaired. In South Africa, that meant all sorts of cool things for tax. In Australia, there's no such thing. But basically, I wear hearing aids. I've lost around about 30% of my hearing. And discovered it probably around 10 years ago. It seems to have been a bit of a gradual thing. Figured out that my whole family was getting irritated with me and eventually went for the tests. Now I have hearing aids that make my life great, but I do notice the kind of things I have to make some accommodations for.
For sure. And Elri, yourself, tell us a bit about you, how long you've been with PKF Newcastle for, and when you discovered your disability.
I have been part of Newcastle audit for around 6 years now, and also living in Australia for about 6 years. And my hearing disability is as a result of chronic inner ear infection as a baby growing up and then a young child. And I did outgrow the chronic inner ear infection at around 12 or 13 years of age, but the damage was already done. And then, if I can use Lana's fancy terms there, but I'm also legally, I have a legal hearing disability. So I can't exactly remember my percentage of hearing aid loss, but it is there, quite significant. So for me, growing up, I guess that kind of falls into how I learned to manage my hearing disability. But for me, growing up in our home, everything was always loud because my father is also hearing disabled, but his is as a result of working in engineering. So our house was always loud, always. And my family was loud. So the full impact of having that hearing loss wasn't really there because my family and my friends and loved ones, they all adapted around it. So I didn't get hearing aids that young. Kind of had to go through a journey to get there, but I do wear them now. Yeah,
they're very funny. And well, mine are very funny. So the new ones that I've got now are Bluetooth. So I made everybody feel really strange because I walk around the house talking and it looks like I'm talking to myself. So they call me crazy, but it's great. So you turn your phone on silent. And then I was recording something, like I had a film crew in recording something, and quite soon after I got the new ones and realized that it still plays your ringtone in your head, even if your phone's on silent. You have to actually switch the Bluetooth off as well. So it's wow. Next layer going into a meeting, remember to turn the Bluetooth off so that you're not, because you can only keep a straight face for so long because it's quite loud.
For sure.
That was my funny one with my new hearing aids, but these things are really useful and really incredible.
Yeah, wow. So, sorry, just going back to that point you made before when your family was saying it's time to go and maybe seek some help. How long of a journey was it until you admitted, okay, I probably should go get some help?
Well, I hadn't really thought about it because I think, Elri, maybe it is a South African thing, but like everybody in my house was loud. And I hadn't really considered it, but mine worked a little differently. So mine wasn't from damage to my ears. They went through all the things it can be. And I got an autoimmune thyroid disease when I was in my early 20s. So I'm on thyroid meds. And the audiologist eventually, by sort of process of elimination, figured out that it was that had caused the hearing loss over sort of an extended period. But I've lost certain tones as opposed to, so just making things louder isn't enough to make them clear. So there's certain frequencies that you can hear and certain frequencies that you can't. So the giveaway in my house was South Africa was having all of its load shedding. So we got a gas kettle, a kettle to put on the gas stove.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing
I have one of those.
Yeah, and the thing was whistling like crazy. I was in a room further than my husband, and he was yelling, like, can't you hear that? I'm going, no. No, I lie. I was in the closer room to the kettle, and he was in the study. There was a room further away, and he was yelling at me, and I just hadn't heard it yet. And then we sort of, by process of elimination, I also thought that my kids were just being muttering teenagers, because, teenagers mumble. So, like, they would start talking, and I'd be fine, and then they'd walk away from me down the passage, and I'd say, stop mumbling. But they were probably speaking normally. I just hadn't realized that I was compensating by a bit of lip reading.
Fair enough. Yeah. And Elri, is that a similar situation you found yourself in, that you just weren't putting noises to sounds and pieces together?
Probably in later years, I would say, because I've always known I was deaf. Like that's always been a given. I knew that it was there, but those around me already adapted for me, so they would automatically be louder than usual. Friends, family, extended family. So they would already be louder than usual. But I have the same thing in that different tones, or you can hear better than others.
Does that find it like, what layers of complication does that add actually working with people? Because I can imagine some people are therefore easier to understand than others, just by tone and pitch and frequency of their voice, let alone when you add accents and things on top of that.
The accents kill me. The accents absolutely kill me. So when I moved to Australia, I struggled a bit more. And then we moved, and a few months later, throw in COVID, and people were wearing masks. Then I was really in trouble, because I think you still do an element of lip reading, like without even. You've never learned to do it, but your brain is so amazing. You just adapt. It kind of figures it out for you. Did you find COVID with masks really tricky, Elri?
Yes, it was very tricky. Yeah,
that was
really because of that lip reading. Because for me, so I learned to lip read from a young age. That was something that I could do, and having that extra sense of ears, because it's kind of my ears being taken away from me at that point with the mask had a significant impact. Yeah, it was a struggle.
Yeah, and then the accents, and then all the other complications. And how many times can you say, I'm sorry, please could you repeat that, pardon? Like, eventually you just smile and wave, like, well, I do.
Yeah, agree.
You look a little crazy, but there are only so many times you can say it. Do you struggle the most in situations, Elri, where there's background noise, like a restaurant or something, when it's noisy or something like that?
Funny enough for me, Lana, that's actually where I hear the best. In a noisy background, the moment that it quiets down, I struggle.
It's so funny.
If it's too quiet, I can't. I struggle. I really struggle. So if you just think about camping and sitting around the bonfire in your camp setting and having those hushed conversations at night, that's a struggle, because it's too quiet for me. Yeah. I kind of need that. I don't know if it elevates whatever is coming my way, like voices. I don't know. It's weird, but I better function if it is a bit noisy, but not so much in the sense of I wouldn't say background noise like an aircon running or a printer printing, not like that, but in a restaurant setting or where music's playing or something like that, I hear better.
That's interesting, because that's not the experience you've told me you've had, Lana. When we're out in public,
Yeah, it's crazy when there's that much background noise, and I struggle to filter out just the one person that I'm talking to. It is interesting, and boardroom, like when everything, obviously, again, that COVID time, when everything went into Teams meetings like this, it's fine because the sound is clear and you're seeing the person's face, so you are still able to do that element. But now if I were talking to a whole lot of people around a boardroom table, then it's particularly tricky, like on a Teams call where I'm on this side and they're all in a boardroom. Then I can't, and then I'll often have to ask for somebody to make an accommodation to say, would the person closer to the speaker please mind repeating that for me? Or something like that. But the other thing that's tricky, and Elri, I'd be interested to know if it's tricky for you, is I had an office previously where my back, I hate having an office where my back is to the door, because you don't hear, like if somebody's being polite and they don't want to be loud and they'll go hello or whatever, like I don't know if that's just somebody walking past and the normal amount of noise, or if they're actually speaking to me. So I prefer to face towards the door, because then you've got the added like bonus of seeing the people around, Otherwise, I was saying, I suppose that's an accommodation that you can make for somebody with a hearing impairment. Make sure their desk faces the right way.
Yeah, and Elri, are there accommodations that you've made in Newcastle to suit your situation?
Yes, internally. So both my team members are aware of the fact that I'm hard hearing. I like to call it hard hearing because I'm not completely deaf. The moment you say you're deaf, it's like, do you use sign language? No, it's not like that. Just hard hearing. So both of the team members know about the situation. I do know we have a couple of new ones that started now, so I have to go through that internal process of kind of reintroducing myself again. But I tell them beforehand that if you need my help, like I'm more than happy to help you, open for any conversation or anything, but can you just go to a quiet room, because the sound comes to me better that way. So if you were at my desk in the open plan setup that we do have at Newcastle, the chance of me missing something is so big, even if you're standing at my desk, because sound just travels and it doesn't necessarily come my way. So I just ask them, like, if you need my help, let's go to a quiet room. And the partners adapted to that as well. So I've even had Marty coming up to me a couple of times and saying, hey, Elri, I just thought, like, I just said hello to you, but you probably missed it. How are you? Things like that. So that's kind of some of the small things that I've done around the office to make sure that I don't miss anything.
I think for me, I'm comfortable with people knowing, like, it's not, I think some people get a little embarrassed, like if they have got something, they don't want to tell people about it. I think you should, I think you just have to go, sorry, man, struggle here, check my little hearing aids. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, I'm not embarrassed by it. You kind of own it and say, sorry, can you say that again? I had a very funny lunch the other day with Jim Allenby from PKF Sustainability, and we were with 3 other people, and 2 of them were gents with hearing aids. So the one said, oh, sorry, and he had lost hearing in one ear, and he was like, oh, sorry, I just need to sit on this side so that I can hear you. And the other one said, oh, yeah, my hearing aids. I was like, well, me too. So Jim was like, oh, help me here. I come to lunch with 3 people with hearing aids. So that was an interesting conversation, but we found a quiet enough spot where it doesn't, I don't feel like it impacts my life that much on a daily basis, but something that when convincing me that I needed to get the hearing aids, not that I needed convincing, but she was obviously selling me on the whole idea. She said, imagine like your computer when you're running a really big program. Your hearing takes up that much more of the space in your brain, was the way she explained it to me.
Yeah.
So she said, if you struggle, you will be more tired by the end of the day and potentially cranky and whatever, because you've had to concentrate so hard just to interpret what people are saying. So it does leave you a little more tired. And I had a problem. I had my hearing aids in, but I left the charger somewhere, and I had to go get a charger, so I didn't have for a couple of days. And man, I was tired and cranky because I'm now accustomed to wearing them and not having to struggle quite so much.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's not something I would have considered, if you hadn't told me. Just that, it's an innate. I don't have to think about hearing. I don't have to think about the messages coming in. I can only imagine how draining that would be to actually have to pay attention and filter more actively than what maybe comes innately to other people.
The research says that untreated hearing loss over extended time leads to cognitive decline.
Wow.
So, yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
She sent me home with the article to read. She was making 100% sure I wasn't going to not get the hearing aids and the help that I needed. So, I mean, great of her to do that.
For sure. Elri, can I, like your dad with his hearing difficulty, did he get hearing aids quite willingly? Was he open to what was going on?
No, he wasn't that open to it. He actually just received hearing aids around 2 years ago. Yeah. So he wasn't that open to it as with me. But I received my hearing aids when I was around 24. Mm-hmm. So for me that was a big change. Lana, I don't know about you, but for me that was a big change and adjustment in my life. Having to hear noises and you're not entirely sure where they're coming from. I got to know a lot of new sounds, I would say, that I didn't know what it was before. And for me, I do remember it was tiring. So sometimes I still find it tiring to wear them. Lana, I don't know about you, but it's sometimes still tiring to wear them. I call it noise pollution.
It's interesting. They explained to me that it would take you about 3 days of wearing them for your brain to be able to now filter and take out the paper rustling and the keys and whatever, like those kinds of sounds. Didn't feel quite so overwhelming after a couple of days. With my set that I had before this, and I've had these for probably about 3 years now, with the initial set that I had, I found them quite uncomfortable, and I was quick to take them out. Like when I got home, I figured my family could just yell if they needed, or, like I could make them repeat themselves. But I must say that the ones that I've got now, I don't know, they're obviously programmed, or they're just so freaking brilliant that I put them in when I wake up and I take them out when I go to bed. So, Yeah, I really, I use mine quite a lot. But yeah, it is. On a particular day, I definitely do find myself more tired when I've been in a situation where I'm really struggling to concentrate because the sound quality is bad. And then, you know what they say, you wait until you get home and you're cranky with your family, Yeah. So... because you're just that little level extra tired, I think is probably the way to describe it.
Yeah. So I recently attended a talk by Specsavers, and they do audiology now, as well as optical. And they were saying that on average it's 10 years before someone notices that they may have a problem before they actually go and do something about it. That's how unlikely we are. Hence my question about your dad. How quickly did he jump at getting help? So do you wish, or was it an option that you wish you'd considered this earlier, Lana, given, if you've only kind of come to this in the last decade or so? No? Yeah,
probably. I don't know when it went like that. Like I identified it when you were talking about those ear infections. My sons both battled, and my one in particular, Elri, and it was funny because I picked his up quite quickly because he would go, I was just trying to teach him to say pardon or excuse me and not, every time they didn't hear you. But I mean, he was 3 at the time. And eventually it occurred to me that he was fine when I was looking at him, but if I was looking away from him and speaking to him, so he had obviously already adapted to lip reading, and he just needed grommets. So, and I took him for the hearing test. So I'd been exposed to it. He was also struggling with pronunciation of certain sounds. And when I took him in, it was such a funny thing. They put them in this little soundproof cubicle, and the audiologist was saying the sounds and he was repeating the words to her. And then I saw her get this look on her face, and she just did this and put her hand over her mouth, and he couldn't hear anything. She said, this child's lip reading. And that's why the glass on the booth that you go into when they do the testing, he just gamed the system essentially, and he got grommets. And so firstly, when he came out of the anesthetic from that, he cried and put the blankets in the hospital over his ears because everything was so loud that he was having complete sensory overload. And it took a week, and he could pronounce all the sounds. He hadn't been able to hear them, and you can't speak clearly if you can't hear the sounds. So I was aware of it. So when everybody started telling me, the kettle was my final straw, I was 100% blaming everybody else for mumbling.
And we're getting hearing aids at 24. 24, pretty adaptable, pretty young. I mean, obviously there was a transition period, but you've done well with them since. I can't imagine you thought, I wish I'd done this sooner, or did you?
No, I wouldn't say I wish I had them sooner, because I wasn't in a situation where I felt that I wasn't better off at that point where I was. Like, I had to do some things to adapt when I was studying, because as I just mentioned, the open plan setting, so that's the struggle for me, and with lecture rooms and things like that.
How did you do in school? And
you just said, can I sit in the front? Yeah, that's it. Just sit in the front. So I was always the front seater. And
that takes a lot of confidence. I was always way too intimidated to sit in the front in the lecture halls. Well done. That's so brave.
So the front seater, I remember in school, some teachers liked having alphabetical order. So as I start with a V, I would usually end up at the back. So having to ask, can I sit in the front? I think the real change came about when I started working, and you're more exposed to people who don't know you. So, and having to have those conversations in saying, hey, listen, can you say again? Oh, I didn't quite get that. And then I guess probably by the first time or so, it's like, I'm really struggling to hear you, and this is the reason why. And just being open to those conversations, I
think that's the thing to anybody that's living with anything, like and that's what I'm saying. My motto for all the stuff we're going to do around impact is be kind. You just don't know what somebody else is dealing with, so just be kind. Accommodate people where you can. It may just be that they're having a terrible day, or that somebody's really ill in their family, or it may be that they're dealing with a disability that you can't see.
And it's really little things for us. Like when we make this podcast, it's obviously a visual medium with the video. Hi, everyone. And then we take this and make it a written article that can be read. The audio obviously goes on podcast distribution channels across the country. So whether you are an audio, visual, or written format digesting kind of person, you've got that for you, those options for you. And it's a small way of trying to make sure that we're tailoring messaging to how people can absorb it, and whether that's matching their disability or even their learning style. I know people like to read, especially at PKF, and then other people prefer to watch a few funny videos and take something away from that instead. So thank you both so much for joining me. This has been such a wonderful chat. And thank you for sharing both of your experiences. Whilst they are similar, they're also so different. And everyone, thanks so much for listening to this episode of the PKF podcast in honour of Disability Pride Month. Thank you.